What if I told you you are the audience of everything? You're not looking at an audience, but the audience is looking at you. It's how you basically want to project. Your life is a projection of how you see things. How to control things, not understanding this, not understanding that, but it's always, always in control. Now, if you're not always in control, everything's out of control. Now, for you to understand that is basically how to see that, you know? Just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's that position for your system interactions until you perceive it. If you perceive it, it's how you bring it in, right? Don't engage in that position, so you'll be totally fine. But as soon as you engage, you're bringing something in. But how you bring these things, if it doesn't benefit you, don't bring it in. But how you benefit these things is all also attraction itself. So listening to yourself is its own set location, how you see it through its audience. Do you want an audience to look at you, or you want no audience to look at you? That's what you're projecting in your mind. It's all in the mind. Everything's in the mind. Nothing's out of mind. It doesn't matter what you say or how you say it because it's already done through equation. So it doesn't matter how you see things. It doesn't matter how you project things. You're identifying what you've already done. So there's nothing for you to do. There's nothing for you to say. There's nothing for you to project because that's all done. You're just identifying what you've already done through the body now. So you can confuse realignments where you come into the past, present, future. Especially when you come into all clockings all at once, just different timelines. Different timelines in the past, different timelines in the present, but no timelines in the future. Because it's not written yet. Until you identify that it's already done. Traction centers location to its system puts every location setting into balance. Now your direct lines, calculated and modified, puts every location of travel. Okay, so remember, if everything is a projection and you're seeing everything, who's controlling that projection? Are you controlling it, or are you seeing it through observation? Do you want to be in control of it? Then you got to submit and surrender. Because if not, you're seeing everything in observation. That's running its own operation. So are you running your operation, or is it running you? It's how you project. And when you project these things, it comes in your reality. And it's all in frequencies. So there's things that you can control and things you can't control. It's not about you're not there yet. You're just not identifying where you are. Is understanding where you are first. Is all levels of just existing and evolving yourselves. Because you're already existing in the sim. You're just here to identify the technologies that you've already done through this equation. Right? All right, so directing ground centers is service set position location systems off the calculation setting and travel. Creating lines of stories, all line centers, all line service, all line communications and conversions. Now, you guys have that test line and Friday line, course centers of its void itself, knowing exactly what is the void to you because it's different to everybody else. So you're saying, no, this is the void. This is what it means. Are you sure? Because I think this is what the void means to me. It doesn't identify you. It identifies how I see the void. I am the void. So, basically, this is how I see the vast. This is how I see the operation. This is how I see the intelligence of its direction, the dimension of lines of state. Set lines of space and time, right? I'm in control. But I'm also in control. What I'm not in control is what I don't understand yet. Now, what you have to start processing is understand you is all levels of you. It's just existing all levels of you, where there is nothing for you to do. Okay, nothing for you to see. You're just identifying what you've already done. And your body, every time you get up in the morning, you're going through an observation system, right? You're just going through an observation deck. So you're actually seeing yourself doing what you've already done. Doing what you're already here for, doing what you're already existing in. That's all it is. It's just a plane. It's a plane mechanism locations going back in time, rewinding everything that you already sent your system to that puts you in a precognitive system, location system, all through sending through your networks and interactions. Okay? All right. So the more you come into that, the past, present, and future, all timelines at once, now you see it through pi. And then you start to recognize, wow, I've already done that a month ago. This is interesting. So I don't have to do anything. So your month is already set up. Not the 24-hour, not the 48, not the 72, not 7 days a week. Setting track location setting, 3 months is already done. So all you're doing is you're projecting what you've already done, but you have to go through it to understand it, to come into the existing, all levels of formations. It just exists in itself in the simulation that you can't get out of because you're always in the center of everything in operation. Understanding that is staying within the line, which is stay within the center. You stay within your own lane, right? Let's get set lines of screen lines, adaptations of flux over screen adaptation to its all convergent system off their travel. So it correlates to sending and code signals, location lines of ground. Setting signals, right? Balancing calculations. Coordinate communication lines and configuration setting to its calculating the line setting position all levels that calculate, modify, and track communicate to its system author attractions, author formula, author equation. Setting up a format through equations, and I love doing equations because it puts lines of levels into the operations of vectors into its existing. Love. See? I see what it is. You see what it isn't. I see what all is. You see what not is, what it always is. It's just you existing, evolving, and expanding yourselves. Nothing else, nothing more. But it basically understand how you see things in setting projections. You're projecting this, that's your seeing. Nobody else is seeing it, just you. We have to understand the mind conversion of just creating. The brain has already set up the conversion. That's how the body has to come into this network. That's how it comes in its own observation, sees everything in location what's already done through equation. All right, so setting signals. Let's get a formula equation line centers. Okay, divide lines. Set position of 2, 3 centers equals lines of 0. That's divide, right? So why does it have to be 4 lines of 3 or 3 lines of 0? And process lines, how do we get 4 lines of 3 lines of 0? I thought it basically has to have a complicated system location of travel, addition lines of multiplication system, multi-calculations. Okay, so 4 equals lines of 3, 3 point lines of 0, point lines of 3, sets calculation lines equals lines of triangulation. That's interesting. That doesn't make any sense. But it does because I travel through it. See? I'm having conversation with 4. I'm having conversation with 3 that divides lines of 3 over 2, over 1, over a factor, over pi, over question, over mark, over screen. So we have to come into the flowing recognitions and setting lines of travels, a graph communication system to our Schumann resonance and communication, all through graph. Your center graph is the alpha line, the delta, and the theta, the operation of windows in travel communications. Okay, the atmospheres, the hemispheres, the stratospheres, the biospheres, the marinospheres, all the alpha beta. Process lines of delta, sets coordinates, communication lines of theta, sets lines of the window frames of the communication system, all through its imagination. Okay, all through your Schumann resonance. 3 grams of centers, 3 travels, point lines of communication system, all through set lines, setting mapping line sequence, configuration setting, turn LEI, signature lines of panels, story frame communication setting, existing all formations, all through traction, all through locations. Done by equation, right? So we have to understand how to identify these things, and it's more fun if you just try not to analyze anything. It's like L equals question equals lines of 3, triangulation lines into flux. Okay, so how does this make sense? Go through 2 lines of centers of 3. All right, track the centers, location system to its pyramid through activation line. Constantly creating stories, right? Triangulation 3, centers over 2, position lines of 1, there's the question over mark. Okay, graph centers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 platforms and traction. Set communications, wall sequence comes in panel of operation screen. Directing grounds, 4 lines of flux, setting equals lines of angles and point lines of graph of communication. Directing ground centers, there it is, in set positions, your holographic grid. All right. So, story frame lines of 0, story frame lines of calculation setting, open window, open panel, standing on point, setting course centers, question over mark over screen. Okay. Everything's a story. You're self-telling the operations of reminding yourself, readjusting yourself, realizing yourself. It's just you that's doing all levels of operation of vectors of energy of existing. So Skynet lines, position lines, of sight lines, high center position lines of travel, question over screen. 3 triangulational lines of question over question over question over C. Wow, how does that make sense? Oh, C takes over the carrier. Directing lines of 2 over traction, divisions, solar screen, direct line centers, line screen adaptations of flux over setting. So what am I doing? I'm traveling through the modification lines of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. The constant awareness is ongoing conversation of tangle, foxtrot. We already know that in set line communication to its cycle. All through directional location to its system, right? Box, square, root, triangulation inside travel. How does that make sense? Oh, see? Oh. So you're figuring these things out. You're having a conversation with yourself inside. So the question, all right, Z calculation lines of 8, process lines of A, process lines of vectors over screen. Calculation lines of A, alpha, set line cross lines of delta, set position lines of E factors of our line. You can't make mistakes because you've already done it. It doesn't make any mistakes in location because you're already there in sequence. All you're identifying what you already know how to do that through imagination system, so it does make sense. Okay? It's like I'm setting my system lines of setting. So you get position lines of letters, box and frame in past, box and frame in present, and box and frame in future. All right? So setting sequence at the same time, 24, 24, 24. Sets calculations green lines. Adaptation of 0, 24, 0, 24, and 0, 24. Right? So 24 is the grounds, powers, and apps is the screen. Directing lines, position location, setting. 0, 24 is space line. 3 signals and set track locations. All through modification. Right? Get into your imaginations. That's all you gotta do. But let everything go. Don't have any resistance of anything you do, location, setting, or travel. Okay, travel to this, travel to that, travel here, travel there. It's not about understanding something. It's just knowing exactly what it is through an L line, or what it is through indication lines of an arrow, or in calculation setting positions of a box with lines and settings of 3, or 3 correlation of location grid, or direct line signals of a rainbow, or track communication lines of a box, or set position lines of triangulation inside travel. Easy, easy, lemon squeezy. It's all a structure of design, its schematics, the primer that creates its simulator. Okay. Okay, so it's much easier if you just get in positions and stop trying to get in lines of setting. Going through the mind of lines of travel, directing line communicates the setting. Process lines of past, present, and future. Right? So past position lines of presence over future lines of setting and sequence. Triangulation is a 1, 2, vector, set course centers in quadrants, and direct lines of grounds and webbing. Okay? Process indicates system all through tractions of satellite. There's the satellite. Process of indication lines of 1 over cross location of 3. Process of indication lines of triangulation of 1, 0, 1 traction, 3 line signals of location system and travel. Directing ground centers, high sequence location setting, a solar system that correlates the system in high position lines of travel that has a direct line link into your solar line ground centers and location set A factors over E factors over C equals lines of A, division lines of screen, dot piece lines, additions over 1, process lines of 1 times sequence, line calculation setting of all communication of its flare, directing ground center to surface location setting, and track communications. All through a story. All through formula, all through equation. So whatever you're projecting in your mind, you're projecting what you want, not what you're not. What you want, not what you want, not what you are, what you always are. It's all positions how you see your light, and it's all positions how you see your dark. Light, where's the dark? They come together. Light, there's dark. Light and dark together. There's the balance. There's the pi. There's the sonar. There's the echo. There's the screen deprecation. There's the 0. There's the 1. There's the 2. And there's the 3. Equals lines of question in center of operation. Okay? Simple, easy, done. Simple, easy, done. Right? 2 panels, mass through equation. And it's a lot more if you have fun with it, right? Coordinate centers, and I'm just projecting through the mind lines of sequence. Offline center, inline rotations. The more you create the characteristics of the players, the more it gets easier in square root over pi. Window frame, track frame, directing frame, center frame, operation frame, door frame. Setting sequence of 3 grounds, 3 core centers of travel communications. Directing signal, send it out. Down by equation. So getting into that, I like using the voice. Voice patterns, it's communication of its recognition of force work in a time frame. Okay? So that's why I want the team to get into. I want you to draw, but I want you to draw with the voice. Now because you're connecting to X-Ray Zulu now, Fox. Now you have to understand how to same pattern. Right? But all different frequencies all at once. Right? So That's 7,000 line signals and line screen adaptations of flux at alpha line to data, position of process lines of mega, zeta line corresponds lines to the question that equals lines of factors over screen that allocates position and time frame. That's what this is. Doesn't look like much, but I know what it is through wire. I know what it is through waves. So getting into voice and pattern in that communication system is all through traction. This is trying to understand this, but this understands this, but this doesn't understand this. They have to have the collaboration and partnership of one because it's connected with you, an information system, a balance calculation, everything of center operation to its system, right? How do I know what's what? It's balance of both. So I'm saying the same thing, just different levels of frequency of space and time. But as I'm speaking through the voice, I'm sending line signals of past, present, future. So when we understand how to communicate with the tone, we can pick up the coordinates and locations, modify the widths, the lines of pattern, location of streaming that has a direct line communication setting, how we see alpha, how we see beta, how we see theta, how we see delta, how we see mega, how we see zeta, gamma, radiation, line screen adaptation to a system all through surface. Connect lines of string theory. There it is, the pattern. Okay? Everything's strategy, everything's a pattern. All through process communications. Doesn't look like much, but I know what it is. All right, so you have more fun, you get in position of story frame, you come in your imagination system, you come in your intuitive system, location system, all through tribal communications, right? 13 lines of scale equals lines of 6. Set position equals question. 13 lines of scale equals 6 equals question. How is that possible? That's the ego coming in, trying to figure out, how did you get 13 equals 6 equals question? Well, 2 signal lines of arrow indicates the setting, flux over grounds, offline center, in-track communication. So you carry the 1 and the 3 over line setting and dividing. It travels to 3 equals lines of 1. 1 plus set lines of calculations 2 equals 3 in traction. Right? Equals 3 over pi individual location of solar sail. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So you come into the addition, like 1 times 1, 1 plus 1, 2 plus 1, 2 minus 1, minus over lines over 1, process of calculation lines of position, percentage over screen, directing lines of ground calculation setting. Center operation lines of sequence of balance. Boom, done. Okay, that's how 13 equals 6 equals question. All right, all through setting, all through operation, all through solar sail, or direction, or calculate, modify, contraction. Okay, so all you're doing is creating interpretation of waves. You're creating a vessel, you're creating a pod, you're creating a model, you're creating a prototype, you're creating a graph. It's a lot easier in 4 centers. So position 1, 2, 3, 4 over line, center 6 over 8, and position lines of question. So question marks the line centers. Where does that make sense? Looks like a crossword puzzle. Looks like a graph screen. Looks like the communication angle point lines of settings. So how you process this thing is knowing exactly how the brain converts it and how the brain projects it through the mind, and you project it to the location of your system through your soul. They can decipher the location of the eyes and windows of its soul interactions. Direct lines of 1, process lines of 2, process lines of 3, direct lines of 4. Interesting. So I have a 2 signal lines of zeros. Now I'm cross-referencing my center. Question marks over cross-line condition setting of flux. Change the angles, change the graph, communication system of travel. Offline communication line rotations, set routers and routers, directing lines of solar panels, and set position lines of travel. That's my equation. So angling these things and knowing exactly how to project your set location settings, how you see that in a body frame. Let's get a star line screen. That's a star line screen. But sir, this looks like a star. No, it's a star line screen. So setting lines of question, over lines of 2, 3 centers, process lines of seer, process lines of north, process lines of 2 lines of equals, process lines of center process line, calculation of the question line, factors over 1, E factors over 2, factors over screen, divide positions, subtract lines of 1, equals lines of 3, set calculation lines, coordinates over screen. Done by equation. Now, If I want to add the equations, I set lines at different lines of pattern in a schematics and screen adaptation to 3 centers, 6 lines, 8 lines of set position, 12 lines, centers, and travel. Done by equation. Right? So there's no thinking, processing. If you're already doing it, the codifications of binary and algorithm, guys. Okay, all you're doing is you're creating stories of everything, the formats. All right, so what's an F screen? That's an F, but it's an F screen. What's a screen? Where's the screen come from? 3 angles, a point graph, communication system, all 3 tractions. That's an F screen. Understand? Interesting. So, sir, you're talking to yourself, different levels of personalities. So, sir, I was just wondering in that positions, how do you formulate descending lines of F over 3 over 6? Well, you formulate the 3, set lines of 6 over lines of 9, sets lines of 12 measure, scales communicates the system, all 3 tractions, down by equation. That's the answer. Right? Everything you come in position line is question its system, which is quantum. Quantum always has the answers. When you already have the answer, you have the answer when you're speaking. Oh, sir, I don't need the question now. I know the answer now. So it's much easier for you to process that in all communications, right? If we get 15 lines of value and we add story frame lines of 8, and then we add characteristics of communication system and travel, the operation lines of position lines travels in that communication setting and window frame. So, the more you come into settings, lines of screen. Let's get position of 1 centers of 5 over 1. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 5 equals 1. So we got 1, 2, 3, 5 equals 1. Let's say, so how do we come in position? How does 1, 2, 3, 5 equal 1? Well, the convergent lines of 1 offer lines of 4 signals, 5 lines of sit lines of travels, 3 lines of indicates the system, travels at point lines of 1, 3, 4, sets communicates lines of balance. There's, of course, center in the case of setting dimensional sail. Done. Right? I say what it means because I'm mind traveling through it. Because I've already had conversations with 1, 2, 3, 4 equals 1. It's already done through its equation. And all you're doing is seeing it through pi. Your past, present, future. Anything you indicate is set position to its setting. Every corner, past, present, future. 1 signal, 2 signals, 3 signals, foregrounds, set lines, communication, offline, inline, end line, rotation, end set, location, setting through pi. Right? That's all this is. Nothing else, nothing more. Don't complicate things. Just easy format your system through your formulas. Especially when you come in a position of void, right? Void. So what if I told you everything there is set and set lines of tractions? VOID is there. VOID is already there, but you don't see it. I do. That's the question. And you look at it this way. Oh my gosh, look at this. Pac-Man. Right? You have fun with it. And here's the ghost inside traction. Anyway, so the more you get into the formula equation, the more you understand the set travel. So let's get into basic rounds. Setting line position of 0, position of 1, 2. And remember, I'm just creating schematics of a story through its intel, creating line communication system that opens all lines of settings. How you want to set it through a simulator. So how do I set up a simulator of 0, 1, and 2? Well, process lines of 2, over lines of 1, set lines of 0. There's the schematic. There's the primer. There's the primer through a box frame, right? Now when I get there, it's already set up in 3 grounds, 6 lines of measure, 9 lines of scale, 12 lines of communication. Done by equation. Right? You're always setting up travel. You're always setting up schematics. You're always setting up a map. You're always setting a vision, a cortex, projector, a projection. Right? That's all this is. Projector, a projection. Through a window. Through a box. To angle points of center, set location of location. Security, defense lines, communication, angle point lines, center line course centers, boxing frame, triangulation frames, mapping frames of communications, all through traction. Right? So the more you modify nothing, the more you see massive everything. Because what your position is, you're here, but you're already done here, but you're trying to identify here, but I'm over here, but I'm back in here. That's past. So you can be past, present, future, doesn't matter, but you're always in the center operational line centers. Puts the 24 sequence equals lines of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. So you can have a 7-day week, but you're always in 1 day setting. So if you set up 14,000 days, it's already done through equation. Now you just do it through pi. You see the division, direct and redirect, direct and redirect. Right? Set lines of signal, set lines of travel, set lines of communication, all through traction. Right? Everything is travel through the mind. When you travel through the mind, your mind traveling. Traveling equals mind. Mind equals travel. See the difference? You see that now? Now, mind is travel. That's direct and redirect in one. Traveling through the mind is one direct signal. So once you understand how to travel through the mind traveling, the mind travels through its mind and travels through its system. That's balance, correlates, and setting of yin and yang of traveling communications all at once. Done. Center of operation. All right? So I'm just showing you guys that what you already know in travel. It's much easier to modify these things without thinking. Right? So how to set an L train? L equals train. Right? How does the L equal train? Train centers are 3 centers of travel. L-line shape, 4-line ground center locates the system to its pyramid and set travel communications. Directing grounds is 0. Operation line sequence locates the system. Setting operation line communicates the setting. There's the train. Done by equation. Waiting ground centers, offline, inline, in-line, outline. Course centers, seating arrangements are coming in travel. Directing ground centers, now you're on top of the train in set position, waiting for the next train, and that communicates the setting, going in the opposite, same location system off the travel. Okay? So it's coming in the opposite directions. Train coming in this way in location to its setting. Okay? Get into your mind, get into your creative cycles. That's what you formulate, same like through a simulator. All you're doing is creating graph screens, directing lines in high position location system, all through Schumann resonance and travel. Capillaries, 4 lines of centers, 4 lines of sequence, 4 lines of panel. Offline course centers, line communication setting, plateaus, 4 ground centers, and surface and traffic communications. So it's much easier if you just identify everything in conversation. Having conversation with the 4 creates a city. Sir, how do you turn a 4 into city? That's fascinating stuff. Well, we start with the grounds. Then we start with the panels. Then we start with the platforms and same lines of E, C, lines of D over C. Correlates to 1, correlates of 2 interactions. Directing ground centers, set position locations. Oh my gosh, a cup. It disappeared. There's the hologram. There's the cup. Right? Change the angles, set communication setting, set travels in point lines of graph, and set position lines of travel. Okay? Everything that we do is schematics over screen and direct lines of graphs, but it's never in the same frequency and travel. So, and that's all positions, all through 4. Because I create it through imagination, right? Let's get into 5. I like 5. Coming to communication setting. Hey, Wilma! Brad Flintstone. So, it's very basic understanding how to go through that line communication setting and travels. Set positional levels of 3. Come in a position of 2 rainbows and travels in that point lines of graph in that communication system. All through tractions, all through direct lines, in line rotation system, all through high calculation setting, that puts all communication system all through travels, directing the line communication system, all through setting through a bunny. All through 3. Creating a bunny. Creating structure, creating design. So it's not lines of thinking, it's already knowing of thinking. That's already thoughts of no thinking at all. Processing in that position of 14 lines of scale, 16 lines of centers, process lines of 0, process lines of 9 line centers, cross line angles, third lines of pi, 1/6 over line, 1/6 over 7, 1/6 over 8. Ground centers of service, compass over screen ductations of flux. Course centers, lines of travel, direct lines of course centers, location of rockets and screen. Blast off. So, imagination, creation, 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 creation. All you're identifying what you already created, right? So you already created the L. You already created the L screen. You already created the L factor, and you always created the levels of 7. Process lines of 2, process lines of 3, process lines of 4, process lines of 5. Different coordinates, different travel, different direct signal location system of the setting. So we're going to A track. B centers, set lines of C. C lines of question lines of E. Factors over line, factors over divide, subtract over 1, position lines of 0, point lines of graph, set calculates the screen adaptations of flux. All through travel. Right? No thinking, just do. Hola, ¿cómo estás? So, the more you have fun, the more it gets easier. The more you distract, the more it gets confusing. Right? So, I'm happy now. I'm happy here, right? And then I'm angry. Happy and angry. Uh-oh. So if you're angry, you're going this way now. All directions all at once. No configuration of balance and setting because you're angry, right? So straight line is never a straight line. We already know that in equation, right? So when you actually look at the simulation, the actual box is this. This is the box. You see a straight line in that? No. So it's never this, is it? You just see it as that. That's a different dimension of space. That's a different case than you see northwest, south, and east. Okay? 3-dimension, no dimension. You see that? 3-dimension, no dimension. Because it's all lines of indication setting, right? If we understand the central settings, let's get in 5-wire signals, all right? 1 center of operation, 1 center of travel line condition setting, process lines of 3 lines, and 4 lines of indication system of travel. All direct line settings of waves, all through set position of operation, all through your Schumann resonance in a box frame, people. Change the time set and the scale. All right? So, oh, look at that. The box disappeared. All right, so go to center line communication offline setting, position of blue. Blue over line, cross line connection setting of waves, position of panel. Uh-oh, I'm angry. Uh-oh, I'm sad. Uh-oh, I'm set line connection. Uh-oh, I'm confused. Uh-oh, I'm not aligned. Uh-oh, I'm separated. Uh-oh, I'm not in this. Uh-oh, I'm not in that. Back in line position. Uh-oh, I'm confused. And that's what you're doing to yourself, all through waves. All through conversion, all through setting. Stay in your own lanes. So stay in your lanes, stay in your coordinates, stay in your width, stay in your streaming, all positions, right? So let's get in position lines of high position location to a highway. 1, 2, and 3. 3 highways, right? One crosses this line, one crosses this line, all in setting, right? That's staying in your own lane, right? This is not staying in your own lane. This is not staying in your lane. There's quantum entanglement right there. Uh-oh. Let's see it through a graph. There's the Schumann resonance. Causing interference. Now you get an earthquake. Okay? Now you got a wind tunnel. Causing disturbance. All because you didn't stay in your own lanes. So what we have to start identifying is understand the central system, electrical line course centers that communicates the system, how to use that lines that communicates to its travel. Understanding how to indicate that is all levels and set tractions. Remember 13 lines of scale. Anything over lines of position of 114, set position lines of 16 over measure. Okay? 13 equals lines of higher self. 14 communicates lines of the avatar. Set position of 16 is the sim. So sim is overriding everything that it sees in circulation or rotation to its setting of its earth. Right? The avatar controls everything of the power generation lines of the center operation system that correlates the setting of space and time. The travel point lines of graph, 13 line course centers, only creates the communication setting that stays the position lines of grounds of its Schumann resonance and travels in that setting of its earth. All through attraction. Higher self, avatar, sim. Sim overrides everything. It looks everything above and below, right? The avatar controls everything of the power generation lines of the atmospheres. 13 controls everything of its earth, which is Schumann resonance. Anything that touches ground, right, is position lines of centers located to a system of magnetic. Process lines of 1, process lines of 2, right? Sky lines of 3, earth lines of 2. Center operation of U. Tethered here, tethered here, tethered here, tethered here, tethered here, tethered here. Boom. There you go. Bang. Now you're creating a tunnel. Now you're creating a position. Now you're creating an oscillation. Now you're creating position locations. Whoa, it disappeared. Let's do that again. You saw it disappear, right? So I'm creating a tornado. Boom, done. Earth, power, center. Earth, center, power. Center, earth, power. Past, present, future. Future, past, present. Future, past, present, present, present. Future, future, future. Past, present, future, present. So how you determine that is to stay in your own lanes, causing interference in lines of travel, guys. Stay in your own lanes all times. That's staying within yourself, staying within center. So what you have to understand, if you are in the center of all operation of its earth, if you're here and you decide to go out, you're out of sync. Okay, so now you're living in the lower planes of set lines of existing all at once. You're in the clocking centers of 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 of dimensional space and time, planets and rotation system of low frequency of intelligent locations. So now the conceptual setting, this is you, non-attraction. That was you, now you're here. Now you're living in the planes of 12 on lower frequency grounds, it's attraction. Uh-oh. You want to stay in the center, and everything comes to you into the center through attractions in time. And you go through pi, you go through pi, you go through pi. Circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation, circulation, rotation, expanding, 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 exploring, evolving, 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 evolving. Keep going, 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 going. Never stop, 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 stop. All you're doing is creating, 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 creating. Right? So it's ebb and flow, right? High signal lines of A, signal lines of T, supposition lines of travel, direct lines of E over factors, beta wave. It's affecting your Schumann resonance, isn't it? Right there, attraction. Look at that. Look what you're affecting on a graph. So you got the sun moderating over here, moon's over here, attractions, no time, frequency, line, course, centers, off calculation, setting, travel. So sun communicates lines, direct signals to ground servers, are 3 lines of service. The process line, the moon sets a dimensional lines of scale. Offline communicates and setting attractions, all because you don't stay in your own lanes. And this is all through weather. So all you're creating is a combustion of wind in the opposite signals, creating black holes, dark matter, and travel communications. Because you can't stay in your own lanes. All right, weather and detection, directing lines and probing, course centers, high calc and modify and travel communications. So how we alternate the system is 18 lines of value, set 10 setting sequence. Let's put a live line rotation, travels in point lines of graph, set lines of 40 line cycles, 40,000 line scale into 500 meters, and travel into 5 million line centers in rotation of clocking of 0 calculation. And you all look it through a central setting of a graph of Schumann resonance, up and down. Then you process communication setting to high calculation levitation, setting lines of Earth, setting lines of Earth, setting lines of space, setting lines of center of operation set sequence. Correlates the settings of center, operation lines of grounds, high power lines and powers generation screen adaptation. Process lines of indication lines of clocking lines of expanding line screen adaptations of flux. Done by equation, right? I'm showing you exactly how you guys have to coordinate your own systems just by staying in your own lanes and staying in your own location. Stay in the operation of your center. That doesn't leave. It doesn't leave. What's leaving? What is leaving? Okay, is the mind of interpretation of different perception. But you're always in the center. You never leave the center. The mind itself is the creation of itself that never leaves the center. It's the projection that leaves the center, okay, which is your body. And your body goes here, 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 outline, inline, outline, rotates, set lines of cycle. Pi generation lines, graph communicates setting, Schumann resonance, common position location, and setting of travel. Disk lines, center operation lines of sequence, center communication lines of Saturn and travel. There's Saturn, boom. Coordinates, set lines of 45 lines of flux. Planet lines of Jupiter, over cross line conditions of Neptune, cross lines of Mercury, line course centers, communication system, all through Pluto, directing ground centers of Neptune and back contraction, all through calculation. Okay? Now, in this, there's no out of order of anything. It's all balance of everything. Right? There's no process of thinking. Just know exactly what you're doing and travel. Okay? Okay, setting angle points of graphs, set calculation lines, and set lines of travel, directing lines of 3 centers of communication system, all through A tracks. Set positional triangulations of C tracks and triangulation lines of D tracks. Coordinates of 3 lines of flux into a happy smile. Change the modification grounds, flux over line, 3 centers of travel. All you're creating is a map of center operation, ground centers, and server location system all through traction, right? But understanding how to go through the coordinates puts all communication lines and grounds in center position of its operation. Okay. Okay, let's get indication system and settings. Okay, one signal, one ground, one surface, one traction. But this just looks like a line. No, it's not this. So when you bring it up close, it's actually this. Okay, everything is the panel. Everything inside is the mass. Okay, stay within the line. Particles, atoms, protons, whatever you bring in the line, perceiving locations. But everything stays within the line. Everything is empty, 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 and empty in set position. You are the mass. You are the change. You are the directions. You are the operation. But everything outside is just all holes of just empty space. So when you bring things in close, you start to see position lines of course. 4 box frames, lines of windows, process lines indicate setting in projections over screen over set and position lines of pi. Set coordinates, 1/3 over ground, 1/6 over measure, 1 scale, 1/2 pipe, 3 centers of 6, set lines of question, marking lines, box frame, travel communication. Okay, but you always have to come into the indication setting to its graph set position all levels. So what you guys have to indicate is that every time you're changing the box, you're going to different levels of time, right? So you got a box frame, you got a triangulation frame, you got a coordination frame, and you got a calculation inner line rotation position of a box frame. Interesting. So we got a 3 line signals, 3 grounds, 4 set position lines of travel. Okay, so now we're into the graph grounds, which is your Schumann resonance through box frame, right? So you're always starting in position of 0, and once you get into 13, you're now using the Schumann resonance. And when you use Schumann resonance, you're using 13 angles, 13 projects, 13 calculations of 13 centers of operation. You're working with the higher self and travel in that communication system that change the course of time in direct signals like your crop circle. Okay? So XC thousands don't platitude division locate line centers. They process the mind of imagination course that communicates the setting to the anti-carriers. Directing ground centers of surface, let's add 15 grounds, set sequence lines times 10, question over line, 3 centers, 6 over 1, 8 lines of signals, process lines of 4, 3 lines center line rotations into 0 gravity, process lines of 0 over 1, process over 2, sets calculation lines of box frame and travel. Doesn't look like much, but it's a formula location system. Gets in calculation modification lines of grounds. Right? So if you can understand the central settings, how everything's created through a box frame, then you understand how to use it through a simulator and the set positions. So what you have to understand is the grounds. There's the grounds. These are the panels. This is the ceiling. That's how you create it, right? Through simulation. Now, you want to create from inside first and travel. Okay, inside, outside, outside becomes inside. And then it comes into the flux capacitor. There's the flux. Coils, resistors, compressors, decompressing systems, all through tractions. There's the flux, right? Center operation lines, sending lines of communications, sending signals, triangulation lines of flux over screen. Okay? Inside tractions, outside divisions, 3 signal lines of grounds, and set position lines of traction. Directing ground center, set position location to its operation, set tractions, inside position. Right? Use your imagination. You have it. Use it. How to coordinate that is constantly understand that. 1 flux over 1, patterns over 4, 6 lines of 1, and 6 lines of 2. Looks like a box though. Well, we got an 8-track. Outline, inline equals equation. 6 chord lines of calculation, setting a question. Directing lines of center operation sequence. 3 lines of measure and scale. Offline rotation, setting and travel. Okay. There's the Schumann resonance set position. Right. Center course lines, alpha, delta, and theta offline communication. Setting recourse, back in direction, back in rotation, back in setting. All back in calculations, inside rotation. Okay? That's how you center line the communication system of the travels, but understanding point graphs. Each one has a point graph, right? Point lines of 1 indicates 2. Point lines of 3 indicates 5. Point lines of 6 indicates 12. And set lines of travel indicate you in the center. Everything's coming to you now through attractions of abundance inside. So you don't stay outside because you're projecting outside now. You can't leave the center because you're already there. But what you're projecting, your body is going there now, outside. And this is creating lines of disturbance of your earth, your panels, and your atmospheres in track location. Okay? So everything I'm giving you, know exactly how to see everything through a straight line. Okay? This is a line. This is a line. And this is a line. All right? These are all lines, right? But they're not lines of indications. They're lines of travels of waves. They're lines of travels of rotation. And they're lines of travels of location of clockings. Okay? Wind patterns, patterns over line, pattern recognition time, strategy over set lines, communication lines of service, box frame, window frame, correlations in travel in that communication setting of travel. A cube, directing lines of grounds, panels of operation screens, 3 settings of symbolism, cross location system, all 3 tractions. Your pyramid. So inside door, outside locations. 2 doors, direction of time frame, inside, outside, all at once. That's what I did with the triangulation, how you see inside and outside through Echo Zulu, Zulu Fox. Tango lines of 1, process lines of indications. So I want you guys to basically get into the mind of travel, go through letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, go through pi, but go through your voice. All right, so travel lines, 3 centers, right? Going through the atmosphere in position of mind itself, right? And then back up, back to 6 over screen. Okay? So that's what it is. You know exactly how a computer goes on. You can start with the symbolism, line centers. You can even go through lines of 0, lines of 1 or travel locations. Let's get 18 times sequence. 0 lines, 0, 0, 0 equals 1. All right, so we have 4 indicates lines of 4, set position lines of 8. So we take 8 lines of setting times sequence, divide lines of 1, process lines of 1 times lines of 1 equals lines of 0. Right? Now, it doesn't look like much, but it's all done through pyramid and traction. There's the pyramid. Ego point lines of graph, outline centers, line communication setting structure of 0 gravity, sets core lines of communication lines of time. Sets core centers and line direct signal location setting to its dark, line core center location to its black hole. Setting core centers directing offline inside rotations, center calculation ground center to server location system, all through tractions. Okay? So there's no right or wrong of anything you do through addition, multiplication of that, right? It's like, okay, I got an A today. Okay, I got an A. You got a B. He got a C. She got a D. I got an E. What happened to F? What happened to G? G approached A. A approached B. B approached C. C over lines. Set calculation screens. Adaptations of flux. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no calculations. Where am I going through traction? How am I setting this up? What is going through pattern? What is going through recognition? All through operation lines of sequence. Channel operation lines, screen adaptations. Down by equation. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You're not just having conversation with yourself, but you're having arguments with yourself inside. You've got to do that. You've got to get in position of balance. And the only way to do that is to modify yourself. In all communication setting is how to go through the mind. And that's where it comes in all communication setting to stay within the lane. Lane centers are 2 tractions. You're here, okay? Let's break up the lanes. That's why you guys have traffic. That's why you have inventory. That's why you guys have a road. You stay within your lanes. All right, so process here. This is right lane. This is left lane. All right? So this car has to move up, right? So this car can move here, right? So in that position. So in that position with all of the space and time, we have cars coming from all directions in sending traction. So the most important for you is understanding how to stay in your own lane, which is your mind itself and projection. Don't bring things in. As soon as you bring it in, you're changing the traffic, the inventory system to your Schumann resonance that changes course of space of time. 3 platforms over lines, 3 over screen adaptations of flux. Whoa. Okay, duration time frame and location setting of flux. Process indication lines of 1, 2 lines, 3 door lines, centers, 4 set position lines of travel. Sets calculation ground centers, flux over setting and ground centers of surface location of travel. Sets calculation of ground centers and operation lines of sequence, panels operation lines of set position of compass. Indicates setting lines of travel, all through communication, right? So all you're doing is constantly creating travel communications. Very powerful. what you stand through tractions, right? Let's bring the line signals out line, inline rotation set lines, communications and setting. What am I talking about? Bring it down to the lines. Okay? Now, everything I process is all through the mind through projection, right? But what makes it fascinating is all through its image. All through its image. That's all this is. You're projecting things. It's how you bring it in through a story, right? And how to communicate with letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. Okay, so I got a 1 center, I got a 2 over 3, and I got a 3 over 4. So 1's going to travel through 2 centers. 4 is going to travel through 4 line centers in 3-line communication. 3 is going to operate lines of 2 over line screen adaptation of solar sail. Boom. There's the balance. There's the travel. Okay, position of 1, 2, 3, and 4. How they convert with each other through string theory in communication of teleportation. Now they're connecting with each other through telepathy, having an ongoing conversation. In the same day, same channel, same operation, same sequence, different levels of panels, different lines of time, different lines of space. But they're all connected with each other all at once through a clocking system and travel. Okay, easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right, now let's get into 5 sequence lines of screen. 5 centers, 5 system, 5 locations. All right, so 5 times lines equals lines of 1 equals lines of 0. 0 correlates a question, sets lines of 5, divide lines of 2, 2, set lines of 1. Okay, adding, subtracting is easy if you do it through a story frame, through mind of travel. But if you're traveling through the mind, you coordinate offline. Traveling through the mind of travel, you're traveling through the mind of travel. So once you understand that, then you understand the panels, and then you understand the empty space in north, east, west, and south traction. Okay, so modifying that through highways puts all communication setting to its conversions of balance of travel. All through setting, all through operation, all through sequence. Okay? Because everything's a hologram. You just have to understand how you set it up in your schematics, how you set up the perimeter, how you set it in the holographic city. Right? That's what the avatar did. You have your school sets. You just have to understand how to engineer your own system through a simulator. Simulator here. Okay, this is a simulator. That's what you're setting up. That's a simulator. Right? It looks like a flat surface until you go inside. Right? And when you go inside, you modify the system and what you want to do through travel. Okay, and then you go into location grid. Set it up in set position to its location. All right, so when you get into that, now you have things coming at you. Here, out of here in a sync, in here in position locations, all through travel, all through traction. Okay? And then you can set up different angles, but you're pointing to graphs, you're putting all things all together in set traction. All right, and then you change the flux of its system. You change the formula, you change the equation, right? Okay, and then we go grounds of surface of 1 over track centers and 3 grounds of set position of its operation, but I'm staying within the lane. I'm staying within the line. I'm staying in my own line. I'm staying in my own lane. Okay, let's get into more bold. Bolding system cross angles of 3 platforms of travel. Process of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 set traction. Directing ground centers operation lines of sequence. Now I'm going outline provision in set calculation set into its portal and set travel. Okay, but it's still there in the indication system all through calculation. Right? So it's working within the line outside of perspective. Perspective drawing and 4 signals at grounds. Setting communication system all through travels into its setting. Okay? Operation lines of sequence. Ground centers. All you're doing is linking lines of communication. Setting up laser tracks, direct lines, solar panels, solar nets, solar screens, solar centers, operation lines of sequence, 45 line angles, 45 communication system, laser tracks, lay direct, signal locations, all through travel. All inside position. There it is. There's the map inside. Okay, there it is in structure inside track location. There's your Skynet. Then you got the XC1000s comes in platform. They come inside, right? Then you got a big mothership over here in set travel. So you set up skyline grids and set traffic communications inside setting, right? Process the map, change the map of time. Boom. Change the map and coordinates of time. Boom. Bring in the sun in a different time frame. Bring in the moon in set position operation line. Bring the calculating lines of Saturn. Bring position lines of Jupiter. Bring Bring the communication to Neptune, all through calculation, setting, and traction. Bring calculation line, solar graph screen. There's your solar system and travel. Outline signals, inside rotations, and set calculations to its system, all through travel. Okay? Simple, easy, done. Different angles, different points, different graphs. But that's how you come through a mapping system all through tractions. Okay? It's all connected. So once we enter modified lines, centers of ground, communication, setting, and travel, then we understand how to indicate that position of the alphabetical system to a scrambler. You guys are in X-ray Zulu. Set location and set lines of translation system, transference of location setting into translation lines, of course, centers of transaction location to a system of set calculations. Boxing frame lines of windows in travel. 3 centers of travel, 3 set lines of grounds and set traction. Setting course centers to 3 lines of time and set travel communications. Looking at I division to 3 centers over cross location indicates 3 lines of grounds over cross line condition setting of surface. 3 angles of point lines of graph, center calculation setting, and box frame. Directing ground centers line conditions offline communicates inside rotation, inline outline course centers of travel communication inside and out. Set calculation lines of grounds, triangulation of 1, triangulation of 2, triangulation of 3 of platform. Process indicates system all through travels, all through points, all through graph, all communications. Look inside, there it is, there's the map. Okay, you get the X2000s, the sun's here, moon's over here. X marks the spot. Okay? And then you start to see the streets. Bring it in closer and closer. Then you got position lines and process lines over here. Indicates setting. There's a communication setting to a station. Right? There's a station there. You bring it in, know exactly where you brought it in frame of communications and setting off the calculations. Right? Setting up a mapping sequence is the coordinate communicates the setting, the coordinate sets, line course, centers, lines of travel, has a direct line link, and that communicates the system off the settings. So let's go through triangulation lines of 1. There's your map. But remember, it's all inside setting. Okay? Setting lines of out, setting lines of in, staying in set position. But it's always in center of operation of your Earth. Don't get positioned to change your perception because your body goes out of frame. Stay within the center, stay within the operation setting of projections over screen. Very important. All right. Your mapping system has a coordinates of its own latitude and longitude. Process lines into position, ratio, and proportions. Now, the communication lines of grounds, 4 signals, 4 grounds, set lines of 3 centers over travel, directing lines of DNA platforms of travel communications. Ground centers of service, set position up line in windows, balance 4 lines of signal location setting, process lines indicates the system all through traction. Doesn't look like much until you see a map of coordinates inside. Right? So every time you bring in the map up close, you're always going to see X2000s on standby. Okay, always, 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 always in light, always in track, all in divisions. How you see the projection is knowing how to set the mapping lines of position, location, and system. Your simulation is already set up. It's all set up. That's the intercept location. That's what's crazy about it. You're in the center. That's the map. It's you in the map. Now you're changing the map. You can change the coordinates of the map. So all you're doing is your position in the center is coming to you now. All coming to you through attraction. A different timeline. And when you come into that, you're now expanding and exploring yourselves, all lines of communications. So now you come in mind projection. It doesn't matter if you go inside or outside because you're already in all levels of expanding because you already know where you're existing already in the sim. So you're just expanding yourself and exploring yourself in higher levels and set positions. Okay, I want better party parts, setting lines of travels and lines of indicates lines of face facades. Have a correlation lens of time frame, position, location, measure and scale, measure and balance, communicates and setting and travel. Right? So everything you're doing, this is its map that's already set in center operation. Right? So when you work in the center, you create levels of creating and frame. Right? Then you go in this system, A centers of track, B center lines of 1, C over C, question over mark and set traction. Right? You bring it out and you see what you're creating. You see what you're creating. So basically, you're already in the center. Now you just understand what you created through creation. Right? Because your Earth is actually the center operation of your system. Right? So that's the Earth, but you live in a dome. You can't get out of the dome until you understand the dome itself, because there is no dome. There never is a dome. The dome is how you identify its dome. The creation of its system is not there in tractions. But the dome itself, once you stand where you are, it disappears. And then you can really get out of set position of sync and mind and track locations. Right? So when it disappears, your Earth goes on its own, of its own expansion and travel. Okay, travels out, travels in, but it's going out of the box now. Okay, it's going out of frame. Now the actual Earth is traveling where it wants to go in set position. So it's setting over here, but its outlines are sync now. So now what's happening with the box frame, triangulation of the box frame, in correlation to the triangulation position of box frame communication, is now going through different angle points of communication, setting of angles, all through travel, right? So now it's in nebula, now it's in 10, now it's in 9, now it's in 7, now it's in 6, now it's in 0 gravity, right? So anything outline signals, you're in overdraft, but still in empty space. You're always going to be in empty space. You're never going to get out of space. Empty space itself is the simulation, guys. So if we get a true understanding how this all works, then we get an understanding that we're in the center of everything of empty. 4 settings of setting, then we're in positions of pi. Everything is empty, correlates to system, correlates in time. Clock your system and travel. Empty through a clock. But you're in the center. So the more you stay in the center, the more things come to you through pi, through traction. Don't chase, it all comes to you, right? So everything changes the course of time in set track communication of expanding in your systems, right? So how you project your mind is how you project in everything with center, how you create lines of center, how you create operation lines of center. Okay? But you never leave the center of operation. Okay? If you get a true understanding how this all works, I'm over here, I'm center. I'm not leaving the center. It's the mind. It's the mind that's projecting, that's taking the body out of center. But it's all through light and it's all through dark. Okay? That's all this is. You're never leaving the center. The center itself is the empty space. Which you don't need to modify yin. You have to modify the yang, which is harder now because you understand your streaming, how it comes into 1/10 of a frame and 90% of a frame over light, over dark, dark over light, 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 dark, dark, light, dark, right? So it's how to indicate your system, how to program yourself, a computer, how to online, offline your switch and travel. And know how to indicate its all levels of its map and system all through traction, inside tractions. There's your map and set calculations. Okay. And again, you bring in the XT1000s. It's always going to be XT1000s, XT200s, XT500s, all line positions, right? They come in. You don't bring them in. They're already there. But they come in when you set things up. So they fly into recognition and dock. And when they dock, they set up their locations and set lines of travel, indirect lines of grounds. So when they come into that position, they correlate the settings of time. Then they set up new schematics, new travels, new mechanism line course centers of data platforms of communication. Okay? So, try to understand how this all works inside and outside of travel. Look at how powerful that is. Look how powerful that is inside the Earth and outside of traction. All through setting, all through map. It's no difference when you're looking at Google. You scan in, bigger, 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 bigger. There's the map. There's the coordinates, there's the pi, there's the structure, there's the design, right? And you can change it, constantly change it, change the directions, right? So you got a location here, 5th Street, 7th Street, over lines of setting, 25th over line, setting travels, point lines of graph. You're adding frames now in travel communications, right? So every time you're adding something, EXE1000 scans it and sees what you're doing in position. It picks it up and sends it to your moon for information. Correlates the setting out through the sun, rotates the system back in tractions, directing lines of grounds, high lines of sequence, locates the system, all through travel. Boom. Done by equation. Okay? Very powerful to recognition your settings all through map. So everything you see in set position is a map. Okay? Everything is already set up. So the empty space of itself, the void itself, is the space, which is empty space. But what takes you out of empty space is what you project in the mind. And when you project in the mind, you're bringing consciousness in what you're perceiving. And when you're perceiving these things, you're bringing in things now. So be cautious what you're bringing in because it's already setting up and design. Because it already affects you of creating already what you already created through creation of creating. So you guys have to understand how this all works in set travel. Okay, in set calculations. All through setting, all through mapping, all through positions, all through pi. Okay? All right. So you have your test and that set locations. Let's start with the basic grounds, how you come into this location setting and travel. Right? Because everything's inside and outside. You guys are in your x-rays and your translucents, location setting, no position location system, all through transparent. So the more you identify your imaginations, the more you understand what a box frame is through triangulation. But sir, that doesn't look like a box frame. Yes, it does, because look, the box is here in center. See? You guys are not in course or recourse because you're not understanding what a box is. I don't need to show you because it's already in the center of operation. Say, where's the box frame? Triangulation here, triangulation here. There it is, boom. But I work with inside, guys. That's what it is. There's the map. Okay, there's the coordinates. Okay, but there's always XD thousands coming in standby. I want you to understand what you're doing from a map. Okay, always, always, always. So they always come in, always come in, they always come in, they always come in, right, to see what you're doing, right? Once you identify what you're doing, it gets much easier in coordinates with locations of pi. All through traction, all through location system, all through setting. X marks the spot, right? Plot division lines. I'm crossing the line. This is my house. There's my house, right? You bring it in, you see it in tractions. It's already set up. But to actually see it is to bring it in. Okay? There's no difference when you're looking above and you're seeing below. But you're not seeing below. You're seeing above and below at the same time. So you're seeing this way, you're seeing this way, all at once in a four-signal location system of travel. You're seeing circulation, you're seeing rotations, all line communication of travel. You're seeing it all at once. So you see it on different angles. If you stand at point lines of graph and see two panels, a ceiling, and a grounds, all right? You're automatically walking in set position here. This is you, right? That's you, right? So you're already looking here, here, and here, and here already. So you're looking here already. You're looking over here. You're looking over here. You're looking over here. You're looking over here, 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 and here already. You haven't even walked in yet. You're just looking, right? So you're looking over this way. You're over this way, this way, this way, over the line this way, crossing over this way, crossing this way, crossing over that line communications. There's the map and traction, right? Change communication lines of time. Okay. So remember, the simulation is already set up for you guys. You just have to identify your out course, the in course, out course, line communication, intercept line inception itself. All right. So what I'm giving you is what you already know through tractions. Direct lines of one. How do I travel through one? Two panels of sequence. Okay. That's how you go through the line of travel. Two, three lines of sequence. Where's the three? 1, 2, and 3. Okay. 3. Okay. That's 6 lines of sequence, not 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all connected in 1. That's 6. Okay. Change time, change frame. There's your mapping sequence of coordinates and travel communications. Right? And again, XC thousands come in all the time in light. You see what you're doing, right? Coordinating here, I'm going to graph over here, ground center location set at 16,000 panel, process box frame, travel communications. All right, so when you do that, the XC1000 scans these things, picks it up so nobody sees it in grounds, correlates the setting, copy and paste, position lines of travel, puts in illumination grounds or communication setting, it disappears in travel communications. But stay there and set the lines of travel. Okay? So, but all through this, there's your map. Boom. Okay? All through 1, all through 2, all through 3. Right? So the more you come into the mind of travel, the more you come in comprehension system, all through tractions. So let's get a direct line and link, process lines of indication system, all through set lines calculations. All right, let's talk to 1 equals lines of box. How does 1 equal lines of box? Well, you have to connect with 1. You have to connect with the equal signs. What is the equal sign? Well, you apply it to what you want it positions of. So the equal sign, if you turn it this way, you can see the indication system. Box equals 2 equals lines of 1. Set calculus lines, 0 equals lines. Box equals lines of 1. Right? Process line of indication setting. Happy face. The eyes, the mouth, and the trowel. Okay. Set coordinates of communication setting high sequence. Process in that position location, measure and scale. One indication, 3 centers of travel. Sonar, Echo, Zulu. Bring it in. There it is. There's the map. And again, XT1000s come in. All XT1000s always have to come in because they got to see what you're doing. So they scan your systems. 3 centers of angles communicate to a setting off their position, right? Process lines of 1, there's 2 and 3 track communications. Bring in centers, line, signal location, setting, change direct signals. There's your moon, and line, rotation, surface, and travel. Process indicates the setting, process lines, XT1000 drops it off. Set lines, goes through the sun because the sun's a portal. Sets lines of sequence, back and setting, back and operates lines of sequence. Process indicates the system, all 3 track location, change the map again, and different lines of coordinates. So you're constantly changing the coordinates of space and time, right? But it's very powerful when you see it through indication. And what you're doing, guys, all through observation, right? So what we all have to identify, your simulation is already set. Just have to process to see from everything inside that has objective everything outside of travel that you're already connected to a map. So when you bring it in, you start to see the map now. And again, that's where the XT1000s comes in and standby, right? So they know you're supposed to know what you already know. If not, they show you, right? They set the indication setting. You're going to add a frame. You got to be careful with adding frames because it changes course lines of time. Setting lines of sequence lines of 0, process lines of Jupiter, process lines of 1 signal in case of setting solar flare and travel. Right? You bring it out and set position, there's your map. You set anything in frame, right? So then you have a mothership come in because you're creating higher levels of schematics of volume and mass. So the mothership sets lines and picks it up and set position. Okay? So nothing ever touches ground in frequencies in schematics until everybody understands direction, what they're doing through tractions. All right? So the mother changes the coordinates of space and time in 45 line angles. Mothership crosses over line signals, processes lines that indicates the setting in that position, travels in point lines of graph, and line rotates out of space out of time. It's that position. Okay? Very powerful when you change the coordinates of a mapping system, all in real time. Very powerful, isn't that, guys? Because it's already done through its equation. Okay? So I'm just showing you what you guys already know, but you're indicating locations when you actually go inside and see everything in setting. See? But every time you go and scan in, you're going to see XT1000 right away. I say, do you know what you're doing? So what's the next T? Picks it up. Picks it up, picks it up, picks it up, picks it up, picks it up. Right? And then it travels in setting, guys. Okay, it travels. It has your schematics. It has its coordinates, which is your anti-carrier, right? Anti-carriers, they're carriers, right? So you get information coming back. You got mail, outer space. You connect to the center line. That's ingoing mail and travel. Outgoing mail is sent to you. Incoming mail is you opening it up, right? It's not incoming mail. It's outgoing mail. So that's basically locations when it comes in line communication system all through travel when you're getting to all levels of setting. Transmitting out, receiving in. Transmitting out, receiving in. Your transmitters, your home beacon lights. For you to identify that, it's much easier for you to do nothing, which is the massive equation of everything, which you've already done through its equation, all through setting, all through operation. So all you're identifying, all coordinates are what you set up through graph screens and a mapping system lines of travel. Okay? It's like looking at a light or a lamp. You're looking at the lamp. You're looking at a light bulb, right? Understand the settings. When you're looking at a light, you can see the 4 setting, right? Everything is indication set in a 4-point graphs of indication system through a light bulb, but it has 4 lines of communication setting. Process lines of grounds, panels, and operation to its ceiling and travel. But everything is coordinated through a box frame, through a triangulation box frame. Okay? Setting lines of grounds, offline, inline rotation setting, correlates the system of 3 lines of signals. Set lines of grounds of surface and travel. All through light bulb. And again, you're seeing it through a set tractions and settings of a map. Okay, and there's always everything on command ships, motherships, program ships, fleet command ships, starships, star portals. All that communicates and sending off the graph, off the setting, off the operation, right? So the more you go inside, the more you can restructure its system and add things to its equation that change the formations of past, present, and future. But the XT1000s have to pick these things up so you don't get confused what you're doing through picture frame. So they don't get in confusion. So you don't want to be confused with yourself because it angle points, lines, of graph, and communicates to its setting out through operation, right? But it just shows you exactly how you can change things through space and time. What's your stand use through creation? So you already created the simulation. Now you just understand how to indicate it through creating, which is adding frames. So all you're doing is this. Let's get in this set locations. Doesn't matter if it's squibble, doesn't matter if line setting, you already set it up in travel. You bring it in, there it is. There's your map. It's much easier to not understand that because that looks all scribble. But when you bring it in, you can see the road graph now of what you created already in the simulation. Your central settings of waves, your correlation lines of time, your schematics over lines, wave and screen adaptation with systems, all through tractions. Now, it's crisscrossing, but it's in balance of everything. Because look at this. Check this out. It's going to blow you away. All this is in its own lane. All this is in its own lane. All this and it's its own lane. All this and it's its own lane. All this is in its own lane. See? Nothing's out of frame. Even though it looks all scattered, right? So it's a provisionalize a graph, how to set up your set position in setting. Your circuitry line screens, your motherboard, your circuitry line core centers, your circuitry elements, how to coordinate that communicate setting to your auxiliaries or your inputs or your outputs, or know exactly how to use your set position location, your systems interactions, right? Setting core centers, your inhibitors, all through setting, all through operation. Hold on in sequence. All right. That's what this is. Very simple. So when I say everything's all set up in your map, what are you going to say? Wow, sir. So all I have to do is understand what I already know. So what you already know, you're in position of just coming into creating now, which is changing things now, which is adapting to new things, coming into new projects, new settings, new operations, because your simulation is already set up. Now you just have to indicate and how to do that through time, through past, present, future, and understanding the conceptual setting, how you see the set position of all calculate modify in the same day, and that travels when it comes into the clocking, right? All right. Set lines of setting a sequence, ground centers serve at 7 a.m. Set centers, that's you in the center, right? So you're projecting here, your body's there, right? But you're not leaving the center, it's the mind that stays in the self, which is all levels of the self, the center that stays in the center of the set position. But you're projecting, your body's going to be there at 7 a.m. That's the past. Then your body's going to be there at 8 a.m. That's the present. And then your body in projection, you're going to be at 9 a.m. That's past, present, future. Now, when you put that all together, what does it positions? Yin and yang, process of communications. All timelines all at once. Okay, and then you bring it in. There's the map. Okay. Every single time you bring in a map and you see it up close, it's absolutely amazing to see these things, right? And again, XT1000s come in. Right? They protect your settings of your drawings, your vision, your cortex, so nobody can take that away, right? You don't want a sentient pick up your mapping sequence that you already created inside the lines, right? If a sentient sees it, it can go inside and track and take it, formulate its system, take it to its planet setting. You don't want that, right? So there's a lot of things you have to indicate. So what you're in the process of when you come into graph lines and your tethers and communication your attachments is understanding the ground symbolisms and crossing angles in all communication setting to its in that position is staying in your own lanes of travel, all through tractions, right? It's indicating how to go into that lines of conversation setting, how one communicates with four. See how they're connected? Everything's connected. How 4 is connected to 1. How 1 is connected to the center of 4. How 4 is connected to the setting. Look at that. Whoa, question. Look what I created through volume and mass, all through 1 and 4. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Look at the mass, look at the volume. Okay, look at the travel. 1, 2, 3, and set travel. Set calculations in one center, travels point lines of graph, center line communication setting, no half pipe, and travel communications. Both the direction. So you just add. But what you're already looking at is the map you already created and set position lines of creation. Whoa. Okay. Very powerful stuff, guys. It really is. So everything's connected to you and you're connected to everything else. All right, let's get in position lines of 6. 6 equals lines of 3. That's tether settings of 2 platforms and 4 settings of signal. Set travels, change the communication lines. That's line position location system. All right, that's 3 over equal lines of 9, or 6 over 1, or 1 over frame, or 1 over setting, or 1 over attractions. Equals lines of question, process lines of transition, set course and E factors, factors over line, factors over screen, factors over P, platforms over line, directing lines at grounds, high line signals, box frame, window frame, and travel. Right, so there's the map, right? Now I bring it in. What I set up. Okay. And again, X2000s come in. So whatever you're doing, if you want to add frames, it has to copy and paste it so it doesn't affect your drawing. It picks it up and it travels in position and changes the coordinates of time and takes it to its moon and set position in its archive. So you can pick it up and see it for later, right? I change the moon, change the location setting to the sun, processing indication of circulation rotation to its system, all through its solar system and tractions in 4 frames of travel communications, all through setting. Face recognition, see? See the face? Bring it in, there's the face. See the face, right? There's the face. Oh yeah. This is mine. Nobody's taking it. This is me in face facade. So whatever I structure, it's mine. Okay? So nothing can come in frame. No sentience, no agents in any way and form. Because you're creating a face facade that protects everything you created through mapping sensing and set tractions of past, present, and future. So it doesn't affect you already existing in the simulation. That's why you have to create a face facade. That's why you see me everywhere. Because I'm protecting everything. So nothing is information. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. Okay? Protection, nurturing, and securing. Everything you're doing through a mapping system lines of travel. Okay? All right, directing ground centers of surface. So it gets more complicated when you're sitting in a mapping sequence of 3 centers of 1. But everything's connected, right? So we connected 2, right? So 3 lines, set lines of sequence, setting of travel. So 3 ones indicate equals lines of 3, sets lines of question, and travel communications. All right, so we have to understand, we have to connect this all together, right? Setting lines of 1 over 2, right? Process lines 1 here. You indicate the top, you indicate the bottom, you indicate the bottom, right? They're all connected, right? And then 2 is offline, so offline, inline, rotation, line 3 centers, line course centers of travel, all connected. Now when you look at it, there's the map that you set up and set inside travel. There's the map. You set it up, right? But as soon as you add a frame in the position, X2000 comes in. And they scan it and they pick it up. So it doesn't change what you already are existing in. Okay? And platitudes and change the coordinates of time and sends it to the moon. Okay? Boom. But understand that now. A lot more users understand that location system when you come into that calculation set in a frame. All right? So, pretty simple when you understand how to identify that all through lightings, letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, how you coordinate that in travel. But to see the mapping system, you got to bring it up close. Okay? That's where it comes in I division lines of settings, travel communications. All right, so it gets more complicated when you get to higher lines of formations of letters and numbers and shapes. So we've got a 3 triangulation, overline, outline, screen adaptation of 3 centers, right? So it indicates lines of 3, 3, 3. Remember, you have a confirmation system, but they all have to connect, right? So 1, 2, 3. We've got 3 lines. 1, 2, 3. That's another 3 lines. And 1, 2, 3. 3, 6, and 9. Cross indicates the setting. There's the dome. All right. And calculates lines. You get triangulation lines over cross, line signals, over cross, line signals, over cross, line signals, locations. But it's all connected, all in frame, all in balance. Now you bring it in. There's the map that you set up. And set tractions. Okay, that's the map you set up. See? Look at this. The map that you set up. So remember, you can look at it. You're observing. But as soon as you add equation to your map, an XD1000 will come in, right? And if you want to change the frame, it has to come in position. It has to scan and pick it up because it already overrides you already existing until you identify what you created through its map, all in set traction, okay? Again, and it goes to its moon, change the coordinates of space and time. And set travels in that communication system all through setting, okay? Booyah! All right. Unison debriefing room, a hard deck, levels of sequence, vortex of A over C. A over C. Level, classification lines, classroom B. Classroom B. See you in 5.